Now, since we covered the issue in Palestine, I have a couple of questions about Iraq. Now, we all know that any people in the world, if they really elect a representative, have two basic rights. First, any foreign troops out of the country, and second, resources of Iraq are for the Iraqi people. My question is, how does that clash with the American interest in the region?
Well, I mean, I think Iraq has become a classic case of occupation by a foreign army. I mean, the United States does not wish to label itself as an occupation. And recently I was debating this issue with the former chairperson of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and he said we are not colonizing Iraq and Afghanistan, and he would not call it occupation either. So I don't know what it is. And it shows you the stubborn arrogance of the American occupation in both places. I mean, if you look at Iraq now, we are supposedly have surrendered sovereignty to the Iraqi people. I mean, but this is classic occupation colonization. You go to a country, you put your army, you run the show, you dismantle the government, whatever it is, and then you put puppets in place and you call them legitimate government. I mean, we've done that in Afghanistan, we've done that in Iraq. And at every ministry level in Iraq, there's an American expert who basically decides on the issues of how the ministry should be judged and how the ministry should be managed. And in the recent deliberation in the parliament, there were American officials who were present behind the scenes, and they were the ones who were circulating statements and memos between the various contending sides to reach a so-called solution. I mean, so as long as America occupies Iraq, Iraq is occupied, and the Iraqi people will not have the chance to decide to run their own affairs by themselves. It's classic occupation.
Thank you. My second question is about President Obama. President Obama was elected as an agent of change. He was the anti-war candidate. But now in his last speech, he was escalating in Afghanistan, and he mentioned the successes in Iraq. So we have a horrific situation in Iraq where over 1 million civilians died. We have 4 million refugees outside the country, millions of displaced Iraqis inside the country. So can you explain what success he was talking about in Iraq?
Well, first I should say that I was much less impressed. I was not impressed at all by Obama's promises of change. I think we have to realize we're talking about an American empire. I mean, the changes at the helm from one president to another, and an African-American one at that. And I only mention that to imply that he would be much less able to make change and to force shifts in policies than a white male president of the United States. And this is being shown. I mean, the president is so weak. He was intimidated by his own commander in Afghanistan to basically follow a plan that Obama was not preferring in the beginning, and later he adopted it, basically with few minor changes. He is so weak that now he is not promising. He promised to end a war in Iraq that he hasn't ended, and the war of necessity that he praised, he is now expanding. And he also is taking the war to Pakistan and maybe other places too. We read that the so-called unpiloted planes are going to be used to strike at various targets throughout that region, and we know that hundreds of civilians are being killed by these drones. And I also see that as far as Israeli issues, I mean, he earlier made statements that were critical of Israeli settlements only to retract from them. The man who first insisted on an end to settlements is now accepting a so-called curtailment of settlement. That tells me we see a continuation of Bush's wars with a much less softer image and face. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor AbuKhalil.